Welcome to the studio. For years I did printmaking. I like monotypes. With monotypes I would roll the ink out onto a plate so I would have my richest black. And then I would start to remove it to bring the light in. Some of those same techniques I use when I paint. I find that it's good practice, good exercise to go into that deepest dark and let the light enter into the space. So sometimes I'll put in the dark and wipe it away to create a shadow, to give me a sense of the space. This old barn is one that's not far from where my parents live. And I'm painting it mostly from memory, but I have some photographs that I use to correct my memory. And I treat it like a portrait. The barns have personalities like the people I paint. And I want them to tell me their story, albeit quietly, and albeit with my interpretation with paint as opposed to words. So my barn portrait here is a work in progress, and I don't know exactly what will happen with him next. So he'll probably move off the easel and I'll put somebody else on to work on while the oil sets up. I jump around sometimes when I work here, from the more serene landscapes to whimsical things, to work with figure, and then back through the cycle again. There is a poet, Linda Paston, who talked about a figure being in every landscape. And I think that's why I like to go from landscapes to figure work. I think of these as having human qualities in the same way that I look at the landscape of a face or the form of a body, and it is not so different from the form of the landscape. I like to do whimsical pieces because they make me happy. It's good to laugh. It's especially good to laugh out loud. A lot of my work is based on poetry, on literature, and also some theater work or opera. Yes, it's true. I was born with crayons in my hands. I was born when there was still just black and white television. And on Sunday afternoons, when there was nothing to do, if we dared to utter those words, "I'm bored," we would be put to work, usually making art. My mom would say, "Do something, make something, draw something." And my grandparents would say the same thing. So I would color, I would draw. If I had blank pieces of paper or boxes of crayons, it became something. My mom and dad were great about encouraging us to invent things, so we had to look at the world with a creative eye. And we would turn ordinary objects into something else. So oatmeal boxes, cereal boxes, any kind of cardboard box might become a train. It might become a castle or a fort. Fabric and blankets and sheets would become the quintessential tent, and we'd have all sorts of adventures. And I would sometimes make little comic books, just long illustrations and little storylines that probably made no sense whatsoever, but when you're a kid, it doesn't matter. Probably doesn't matter when you're an adult either. I like to collaborate with other artists, particularly artists who are not in the same field as me. So, for example, I'm working with a jazz artist, Susie Thorne, and she came up with this delightful song and asked me to do some illustrations to enhance the story. I listened to the music, I came up with illustrations, and as things happen, I came up with all these other ideas, all these tangents. So now what was one song has become many, and there are lots of different twists and turns going on with this project. We were able to do a residency at a school in Council Bluffs, a therapeutic school, and we worked with a lot of kids who were unsuccessful in a regular school. And those same children also have buckets full of trouble. And we took some of the ideas from the stories of the songs and the images that I came up with and had the kids respond to them. And I feel that that really helps my work. It makes me think about it from other points of view and makes me work harder from an illustrator's point of view, being able to have my work tell a story or to give form to words that others have. So my dad really wanted me to be an artist. The flaw in that dream was that there wasn't really a provision for what you had to do to eat while you were trying to become an artist. After college, I moved to Chicago and did my art, but I also did a variety of other things. You know, every manner of part-time job or full-time job in addition to doing my art. So, yes, I waitressed and bartended and worked in a flower shop. I worked in retail. I did all those things to pay the rent and give me what I needed so that I could do my art in whatever time was remaining. All those crazy experiences with a day job actually enhanced my work as an artist because it gave me lots of time to observe people, to listen. And I think the most important thing for an artist is to be a good observer, to pay attention. So now working full-time as an artist, occasionally I think, oh, I wish I had a day job. I wish I had a regular paycheck. And then I remember those days when I worked all those god-awful jobs in order to pay for the day-to-day things so I could be an artist. And now I've flipped that around. And it took me a long time to get to this place. And I'm not ready to go back or make a change just yet. I really like my job, and my job is to pay attention. When I was working during the residency at the therapeutic school with Susie Thorne and two dancers, we each visited different classrooms and had a number of the kids come in and help us with our work. One day, it was a particularly upsetting day at the school. There were kids, they were having problems everywhere, breaking down everywhere. And I'd gone upstairs to the art room, and there's a boy, a man boy, sitting at the other end of the table. Big kid, well over 6 feet tall. Just big burly kid, and he looked like he was just bristling. And I decided to just sit quietly and keep working. And that day I was working on puppets, so I was sewing. After a few minutes, I introduced myself. I said, "Hi, my name's Paula. What's your name?" So he tells me his name, and he continues to sit there kind of sulking. And after a little while, he turns to me and he said, "Miss Paula, what happened to your hand?" And I said, "Well, I was born that way. It's just a feature. Kind of like you were born with that beautiful dark curly hair. I happen to be born with a hand that's like this. It's just minus a few fingers." And I said, "I can do most things, but sometimes I have to ask for help because there's some things I can't do. And, maybe you could be my right-hand man today and help me with a few things if I need it. In fact, why don't you come and sit by me, and then you can help me." So we were sitting there, and I had him hold the buttons while I was sewing, and he asked me a little bit about what it was like to be different. And, I think it's interesting when, especially in an environment like that, where every child has some difficulty. Their difficulties aren't always the kind that you see physically. And my difficulty, if you want to call it that, is very visible. At the same time, I think it gave me great access to some of these children. And it helped them see that you can continue to do things, and you can do most things. You might have to ask for help, which isn't a bad thing. And their own worries or their own problems, however great or small they may be, are still something that they can manage. And I hope I can lead by example, and in my imperfect way, try to be a good teacher and be open-minded and open-hearted enough that infirmities might be seen more as a feature and not a limitation.